Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse 1. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Paribrajakachaja Stotara Sata Shri Srimad Haisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prinsika Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gora Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhani Ki Jai Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. So last week we finished chapter 8 and starting today I'm going to use a different system. I'm not going to go through chapter by chapter, but I'm going to take the most important verses from the Bhagavad Gita and I'm going to do those one after another. So the Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses, and the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita, in my humble opinion, are those that Prabhupada quoted during his lectures and presentations. These verses are assembled in this book, Prabhupada Shlokas. You can get that. So in Prabhupada Shlokas, there is about 280 verses from the Bhagavad Gita, which Prabhupada used regularly during his preaching. It is a fact that without Prabhupada, we are simply dumb and lame and misguided and forlorn. By the mercy of Prabhupada, a blind man can see, a lame man can cross mountains, and a dumb man can recite poetry. So we start with the Prabhupada's first verse that he quoted a lot, was the first verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Observe ye the armies in Kurukshetra, verse 1, chapter 1. Dhritarashtra vacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kima kurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra vacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kima kurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra vacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kima kurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra, King Dhritarashtra, uvacha said, Dharmakshetre, in the place of pilgrimage, Kurukshetre, in the place named Kurukshetra, Samavetaha, assembled, Yuyutsavaha, desiring to fight, Mamakaha, my party, sons, Pandavaha, the sons of Pandu, Cha, and, Eva, certainly, Kim, what? Akurvata, did they do? Sanjaya, O Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Gita is a widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna, and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in that line of the cyclic succession, without motivated interpretation, then it surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is a perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principles for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmakshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, "What did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?" He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably, because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyas, and therefore by the mercy of Vyas, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's sons, Duryodhana and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious person headed by Yudhishthira would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the word Dharmakshetra and Kurukshetra, apart from the historical and Vedic importance. Sanjaya Dhritarashtra vacha Dharmakshetra Kurukshetra samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata Sanjaya. So, out of the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada consistently quoted around 275 of them. And these are the verses we are going to do in the next few weeks. This first verse sets the scene of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is actually spoken on a battlefield, but it was just not a normal battlefield. It was Dharmakshetra. It was a battlefield meant for the establishment of Dharma. The material world is in constant fight. The fight is between the pious and the impious. The fight is to establish what is reality and to reject what is illusion. What is reality is that nothing belongs to us. Everything belongs to God. We are born with nothing. We leave this body with nothing. We cannot claim proprietorship of anything. Everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. And that philosophy has to be understood. Activity based on understanding God's proprietorship, God's predominance over humanity, is the battle being fought consistently in the material world. It is light against darkness. And in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself explains to Arjuna how this knowledge has to be received. If we follow in the footsteps of Arjuna and also accept this knowledge in the same way as he did, then our life will become successful. What is success in life? Success in life is to understand that we are not this body. Success in life means to understand we are spirit souls. Success in life means to understand that we don't die, only the body dies. And success in life ultimately means to understand our eternal relationship with Krishna. Even though nothing is ours, even though we are born with nothing, even though we cannot leave with anything behind when we die, even though we cannot claim proprietorship over even an atom of this material world because it doesn't belong to us, there is one thing that belongs to us. We have one thing which is ours, and that thing is our eternal loving relationship with Krishna. That is ours. Krishna is mine, is my property, and my relationship with him is my possession. So to understand this, is the principle of religion. And to establish this is the process of the material world. The material world is designed to push us towards this understanding. And the battlefield of Kurukshetra was Krishna showing the world that to fight for Dharma is the path of enlightenment. In this verse, verse 1 of the Gita, Dhritarashtra mentions one word, very important word, and that word is mamaka. Mama means me, I and mine. Mamaka means what belongs to me. Who was he claiming as his own? His sons. And he called them the Kurus. Whereas the Pandavas were called the Pandavas. They were not included in his proprietorship. In other words, even though he was acting as king, he was showing partiality to his own family. Maharaj Kuru was the great ancestors of the royal family at that time. Both the Pandavas and the Kauravas are descendants of Kuru. So when Dhritarashtra claimed Mamaka, it showed two things. It showed his disqualification for being king because he was partial to some and impartial to others. The king is a representative of Krishna. The king is a representative of God. Traditionally, enlightened monarchy comes from the descendants of the sun god, like Lord Ramachandra, and comes from the descendants of the moon god, like Lord Krishna. They are represented. Why are they coming from these two lines? Why is it that the kings can claim divine position? They can claim divine right over the citizens if they exactly follow the guidance of the Supreme King, Krishna. So, the Kurus and the Pandavas were cousin brothers. The story goes that their great-grandfather, Maharaj Shantanu, was the king at that time, 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. And one day when he was out hunting, he came on the banks of the Ganges and he met this very beautiful lady who was Ganga personified, the personification of Ganga. So he became very attracted to her and they began a relationship on the condition, Ganga Devi said, that you may have a relationship with me, but you may never criticize what I do. So that was the arrangement, and they married. They had many sons, and every time one child was born, Ganga would throw him in the Ganges. So this became very, very difficult for Dhritarashtra to understand. So when I think six sons were drowned, and when the seventh son was about also to be drowned, Dhritarashtra, Shantanu complained and he said, "Why are you killing all our children?" And she said, "Well, there is a reason behind it, but because you have criticized me, then I will break a relationship." And she disappeared. He became very much disturbed. And some 16 years later, he again met Ganga Devi on the bank of the Ganges, and she brought a young boy with her. And she said, "This is your seventh son. His name is Bhishma." And so Bhishma became the heir to the throne. And he was very much loved by all the citizens of India. And at that time, the empire of Bharat stretched very far and wide throughout the civilized world. In any case, Shantanu was not finished with his desire for association with women. And one day he met a beautiful young girl. Her name was Satyavati. She was the daughter of a fisherman. And when he met her, he proposed to her father that, "Let me marry your daughter." The father disagreed. And Bhishma went to see the father, promised that he would not become the next king, promised that he would not have any progeny, so they could not claim the throne. Therefore, the son of Satyavati and Shantanu would become the next king. So on that agreement, the fisherman agreed to give his daughter to Maharaj Shantanu. So from that marriage, two children were born, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. So Chitrangada was killed, and in a fight with some demigods, Gandharvas. Sometimes people ask, how is it that in those days the demigods came onto the planet, but nowadays they don't come? That is because we have created hell on earth, because we have created war, famine, slaughterhouses, because people are ignorant, people are not aware of the spiritual identity, they have no program for spiritual emancipation, therefore the demigods are not interested in coming here any more than a sane person is interested in visiting a lunatic asylum or a maximum security prison. So in this way, the demigods, the Gandharvas, were here. The elder son Chitrangada had a disagreement with the king of the Gandharvas, whose name was also Chitrangada, and the boy was killed. So Vichitravirya was left, and Bhishma decided that he was ready to marry, so he went to the kingdom of Kashi and he kidnapped 3 young princesses to bring for his younger brother, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. Amba was allowed to leave because she claimed to have a relationship with Shalya, another king, and the other 2, Ambika and Ambalika, became the wives of Vichitravirya. Unfortunately, before there was any progeny, Vichitravirya also died. So there was a great emergency in the kingdom because there was no prince to take over, because Bhishma had promised not to take the kingdom. So Satyavati, she remembered that before she met Shantanu, she was plying a boat across the Ganges, and Vyasadeva and Parasara Muni, the father of Vyasadeva, he climbed onto the boat. And when we were in the middle of the river, he was attracted by her beauty, and he said to her, I want to have a relationship with you. And she said, it's not possible. I'm a virgin woman. I'm a young girl. I cannot do it. He said to her, I will make so that nobody will know, and you will not lose your virginity. Plus, I will give you a benediction. This was the key. The benediction he gave her was that even though you're living in a house of a fisherman and your body smells of fish, I will give you the power to have such a beautiful perfume that for miles around you, people will smell the beautiful smell. So you will not smell fishy, but you will smell of flowers. So she, being a woman, she became very attracted for that benediction. She agreed, and they had a son. The son was born immediately in the middle of the river on an island. Therefore, and his name was Vyasadeva. He is called Krishna Dwapayana Vyas. Krishna because he was very dark, Dwapayana because he was born on an island in the middle of the Ganges, and Vyas because he divided the Vedic knowledge. So Vyasadeva was an empowered incarnation of Vishnu to systematically arrange the Vedic knowledge into categories so it would be easy for the people of Kali Yuga to understand. Vyasadeva, Vishnu understood that with the beginning of Kali Yuga, people's memory will be short. People will not be able to understand Vedic knowledge very easily. So he made it easy by dividing the one Veda, the Atharva Veda, into 4 Vedas, into the Upanishads, into the Brahmanas, into the Puranas. So in this way, Vyasadeva performed his duty as a Satyavesha avatar. But he also had told his mother when he was born that anytime you want to see me, you simply meditate upon me and I will come. So Satyavati thought, now I have these 2 girls, these 2 widows, Ambika and Ambalika. The husband has died. We require someone to produce children, to produce heirs for the throne. So in her mind, she called Vyasadeva, and they agreed that he would produce sons in the womb of these 2 princesses. By the way, in Kali Yuga, that is forbidden. In previous ages, it was possible that if the husband died, the brother could produce children in the womb of the widow, but that is not allowed in Kali Yuga. 4 things are forbidden in Kali Yuga: to offer a horse in sacrifice, to offer a cow in sacrifice, to take sannyas, and to produce children in your brother's widow. But in those days it was allowed. So the program was arranged, but when Ambika actually was ready, and when she saw Vyasadeva for the first time, she became so afraid because he was so dark, black complexion and very fierce looking, that she couldn't open her eyes. She closed her eyes. And from that conjugation, a child was born blind, and his name was Dhritarashtra. The second child from the second wife, Ambalika, when Ambalika saw Vyasadeva, she became very pale. And therefore her son who was born, his name was Pandu, or the pale one. Then Satyavati was still not satisfied with 2 children, and she said to Vyasadeva, I want 1 more child. So they persuaded Ambika to again conjugate with Vyasadeva, but she was so afraid that at the last minute she substituted 1 servant girl in her place, and from that servant girl a 3rd son was born. His name was Vidura. So these 3 brothers, Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura, were born. Because Dhritarashtra was blind, although he was the eldest son, he was not allowed to be king. According to Vedic tradition, a blind person cannot be king. So his younger brother Pandu, he became the king, and he became a very powerful fighter. But somehow, during his stay in the forest, during his hunting, he became cursed by a Brahmana. A Brahmana was having a relationship with his wife, and on the bank of a lake, Pandu was hunting. He heard the sound. He thought the sound of lovemaking was a deer. Blindly, he shot an arrow without looking, just by ear. Those warriors were so expert in fighting, they could shoot arrows simply by listening. And he killed the Brahmana. And when this happened, when he realized his mistake, he became very, very sorry, and he apologized. But the wife said, because you have killed me, you have killed my husband during our conjugation, whenever you conjugate with your wives, you will also die. So he couldn't have sexual affairs. He couldn't produce children in his wife. He had 2 wives, Kunti and Madri. And that was the situation. So then Kunti Devi, she remembered, she revealed that during her youth, she got a benediction from Durvasa Muni that she could call any demigod if she wanted to have progeny. So when Pandu found this out, he asked her to call different demigods to produce children. So she called the god of Dharma, Yamaraj, and from that union, Yudhishthira was born. Then she called the wind god, Vayu, and from that union, the second son was born, Bhima. Then she called Indra, and from that union, Arjuna was born. Then the same mantra was given to Madri. She called the Ashwini Kumars, and from the Ashwini Kumars, the twins, she gave birth to 2 sons, twin boys, Nakula and Sahadev. And these 5 are called the Pandavas: Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev. So this was the situation. And when they were still little boys, one day Pandu became overwhelmed in the spring. He became overwhelmed by sex desire, and he approached Madri, and she tried to stop him, but he insisted on having a relationship, and because of the curse, he died. So he was cremated. She also ascended onto the funeral pyre. She died with her husband. So Kunti was left with the 5 children in the forest, and some sages were taking care of her, and then they brought him to the capital city. Meantime, Dhritarashtra was married to the queen of Kandahar in Afghanistan. Her name was Gandhari. So Gandhari, she prayed for the benediction to have 100 sons. So she became pregnant, and before she could give birth, she had heard that her competitor, Kunti, had already given birth to Yudhishthira. So she became so angry, she smashed with a fist a womb, and from a womb a ball of flesh came out. So she became distraught, and at that moment Vyasadeva came and he said, take this lump of flesh, cut it into 100 pieces, put them all in a little jar of ghee, and they will become your 100 sons. So she got 100 sons. The first son was Duryodhana. When he was born from the clay pot, he began to bray like an ass, and all different wild animals like jackals and hyenas began to howl. And Vidura told his brother Dhritarashtra that this boy will destroy our family. Please kill him immediately. But Dhritarashtra was very much attached, and he could not see the faults of his son. So in this way, the situation took place, and therefore in this verse, Dhritarashtra says, Mamaka, my sons, who grew up with the Pandavas, 5 Pandavas, in the same capital city. So we will continue on Friday. It's a long story. It's the beginning of the Mahabharata. So if you have any questions, please feel free to comment. I see we have several attendees tonight. Vijayalakshmi Amarnath, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear Prabhu. Atma Pagemaker, who is none other than our Atma Vidya, Dandavas. Vishnivamsa, Dandavas to the assembled devotees. Shiromani Leela Devi Dasi, Hare Krishna. Atma Pagemaker or Atma Vidya comments, I like the new mode of speaking on the Prabhupada shlokas. Nice. Thank you very much, Prabhu. I'm just a servant. Whatever Krishna inspires me to do, I cannot speak. I have nothing to say. I'm simply a fool and a rascal. Before I give class, I usually bow down to my Giriraj, to Krishna, and I beg him, please, let me speak something. Let me say something by your mercy. And that is the actual way of bhakti. That is the way that Lord Chaitanya taught. There is the story that when Lord Chaitanya and Sanatana Goswami met, during his instructions to Sanatana Goswami, Sanatana asked Lord Chaitanya that I have heard that you explain the Atmarama verse to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya 21 times. Can you please explain it to me also? So Lord Chaitanya, before he began his explanation, he said, I don't know anything, but by your association and my desire, maybe something will come out. See, what will come out is Krishna. Krishna is in my heart, is in your heart. If he sees that you're eager to hear and I'm eager to speak, he will make it possible for us to speak. Otherwise, we cannot speak anything. So we also have Mandi Priyor, Hare Krishna, Ekta Atmarami, Haribol, and Vishnivamsa concludes by saying, nice Vedic stories, Ananda, very enlightening. Okay, so we will carry on with the story on Friday. Thank you for participating, and Dandavas to your lotus feet. Hare Krishna.